Now, buckle up and get ready for a nostalgic trip featuring a British sports car that became one of the most memorable and beloved cars of all time, despite not having any cup holders or satellite radio. Okay, let's go full throttle now on Lotus Esprit.
When we think of Lotus, we think of water lilies, Chinese restaurants, maybe even some sort of creepy bug. Oh yeah, and the British sports car with the silent T.
The Lotus Esprit, the Lotus Esprit, spirit.
It's a silent T.
Who puts an E at the beginning of spirit?
I feel like when you say Lotus Esprit, it makes it sound fancier and more European.
The Lotus Esprit debuted at the 1975 Paris Motor Show.
The Lotus was one of the quintessential 80s cars.
And it was all thanks to Lotus founder Colin Chapman, who started building race cars in his garage in 1948. But by 1959, he was selling a different kind of car.
They were primarily a kit car company.
Knight Rider.
Not that kit.
Kind of a smaller, cheaper car that you could piece together yourself.
Oh, the IKEA of automobiles.
It's not very well respected in the industry.
But Lotus didn't pack up and go home. They went on a shopping spree. A British sports car primed to give the Italians a run for their money.
I feel like the Lotus is the poor man's Ferrari. Nobody really ever aspires to a Lotus.
You never saw someone with a Lotus?
Well, maybe it wasn't as cool as a Ferrari.
And if you did, 100% they dealt cocaine.
The Esprit had slick drug dealer good looks, but wasn't packing much under the hood, if you know what I mean.
Instead of a V8 or a V12, you had a small 4-cylinder engine.
With such a tiny engine, Lotus needed a boost of Big D energy. From 007.
In 1977, the Lotus Esprit was prominently featured in the James Bond film, The Spy Who Loved Me.
Honk if you love Roger Moore!
Now, the origin story of how that happened is really interesting. The head of Lotus PR drove the Esprit and parked it in front of the film production studio. The studio executives saw the car and were so impressed with it
that they immediately sprayed it down with machine gun fire and then drove it into the ocean.
Then it went underwater as well. If they got the underwater effect to it, that was kind of smooth. Lotus was fire. You know what? I'm surprised it didn't get a lot of drawback from, like, you know, Back to the Future fans. It kind of reminded me of that DeLorean.
Well spotted, nostalgia connoisseur. Well, remember Colin Chapman? The man behind Lotus?
Absolutely.
Well, he actually helped engineer and design the DeLorean.
It all makes sense now.
The Esprit reached new heights in the 90s when it starred in Pretty Woman.
You ever driven a Lotus?
No.
You're gonna start right now.
I feel like Lotus is kind of like the chunky one in a boy band. Nobody really wants it, but you'll take it if you have to.
The Esprit, like an aging Hollywood star, ended its run in 2004.
The design kind of aged. This wedge-shaped car of the 70s and 80s was no longer in vogue.
But the Lotus Esprit had its day and is now starring in the forgotten franchise of the Discontinued.